All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Chasing Edges podcast. Got a stud on today, Josh Cuthbert. He's a trainer out of Nashville. He trains Monsters, Inc. cast of guys, George Kittle, Robert Tonyan, TJ Hawkinson, and the list goes on and on. The conversation we have is phenomenal. You'll see why he's quickly becoming one of my favorite trainers. Some of his methodology, his application to sport, his balance and work and rest recovery is all dynamite. He talks a lot about the mindset both for high-level athletes that he trains and high performers outside of sport, and that gets into a fun conversation. We spent a lot of time talking about Kittle's mindset, the standards they hold in their group, and then as well as the Workhorse versus Racehorse conversation that I always find super interesting. It goes down rabbit holes as far as manipulating variables in training, as well as recovery modalities and the incorporation of breath, which you know I love. But you can find him at Josh_AlphaStrength or his programming at alphapowerprogram.com. But it's a phenomenal conversation. I hope you get a lot out of it. Take care. Hey, everybody, quick shout out to the Breath Belt. Excited to announce that we're partnering with the Breath Belt here on Chasing Edges. Phenomenal tool. If you're watching the video, I'm holding it up. Looks like a back support device, but it's a great tool to train diaphragmatic strength. Obviously, being a breath coach, I'm a massive fan of it. It gives you the ability to open up the abs, the psoas, activate the QL, get people breathing into their sides and back, which is phenomenal for them. It's very hard to be a 360 breather. It's endorsed by some of the biggest dogs in the industry, RPR System, Sorinex, Kabuki Strength, Rogue Fitness, all the above. You can find them at the Breath Belt on Instagram. You'll see Jesse's profile there, and then thebreathbelt.com. And the coolest thing here is they have given us a massive code for you guys. The code is EDGES20, giving you a 20% off discount to the Breath Belt, and it's all caps, EDGES20, EDGES20. Check them out. But I'm a big believer in this. Obviously, if you've followed the podcast at all, I'm a believer in activation from the inside out. I think that starts with breathing. Obviously, I definitely think that starts with the psoas. You've heard me say before, if I could do one thing before I trained, it'd be trigger pointing my psoas. And if you use this tool, you'll find out why, also along with trigger pointing the psoas in general. But hopefully you enjoy. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Chasing Edges podcast. Got an absolute savage on today, Josh Cuthbert. Got to get that right. What's going on, man?
Man, I'm honored to be here. I appreciate it. We got a good session in earlier, so my heart rate's up a little bit from that, but just living on a high. It's great.
Boom, yeah, the boys are coming off a upper body pump and a little sauna sesh. I got the 16-person sauna traveling with me here. We're in Nashville. We worked out at Josh's Gym Fit Lab.
Yes, sir.
Where he trains anybody and everybody from Gen Pop to pro athletes, correct?
Yeah, and that's what it's interesting when they follow me and they come to me, it's typically the athletes that drive the exposure, right? But 60% of the people that I train on a day-to-day basis, they run the companies that you shop at, from 9 to 5, right? They're CEOs, hospitals, Amazon executives. Those are the people, that keep me the busiest throughout the year. It's the athletes for 4 months out of the year that drive my people to me, but it's the Gen Pop that keeps me busy.
Yeah, I think that's awesome because me personally too, like I'm still just getting into the coaching world and like understanding my coaching skills and the communication that happens between I don't like saying Gen Pop, but like the high performers outside of sport and and working with high performers in sport. There's really cool relative topics that show up, and then there's massively separate topics that show up, whether obviously athletes that want the most out of their body, and then some people when they come to me for obviously breath work and mindset coaching, those kind of things, they want the most out of their mind. And athletes, I don't think always make that correlation to the weight room, what you do, but I think you could do that incredibly because you have a juicy group that you train as far as pro athletes go. We'll just start there then. How do you start with the optimal performance mindset with your athletes?
So I've been blessed with people that have come to me over the years. They've been so like-minded, right? So very rarely do I have somebody that comes into the weight room that isn't a good fit, right? So most of the guys that I have They were 5th round, 6th round, undrafted free agents. They're just hungry, right? And then they come in together, and then the hunger is fighting. They're feeding off each other, right? So it just turns into a pack of wolves, right? They all have the same mindset. They got the same goal. And it wasn't until probably 3 years ago where I really started growing. I had a group of maybe 10, and I remember verbatim, it was Oren Burks, who was a linebacker for the Packers at the time, going into year 3, a special teams guy, just a grinder from Vanderbilt. There's a guy from the Jets who was in there, and I remember hearing Oren call out the guy, "Hey, bitch, you got 3 more reps. Don't cheat." And I said, wait a minute. This is a guy from another team. They don't even play each other, don't know each other, that's calling out somebody else in the weight room that I wasn't able to see. That's the environment that I had built where other people are holding each other accountable. And that was when I knew that what I was building, honestly, was something special beyond what I was programming, because if we're being honest, programming is programming. It's the way that you perform it. It's the intention of every single rep of every single set, but it's the mindset of the people when they come into the weight room and the effort that they were giving me and getting from each other. That's when I knew something great was happening.
That's freaking awesome. I love that, because like even like on teams, like full teams where you guys know you're rowing the boat in the same direction, you won't get that. And that's kind of that like bad apple syndrome where like that spreads, and it happens in business too. And I've talked 100%. To some like presidents and CEOs that were they point them out as fast as possible and say you're gone, because they understand how toxic that can be.
Right.
And then, but so you've eventually developed a standard by the character of person that you've brought in. Yeah. As far as like the holding the standard, like do you have guys come in and leave? Because like I've worked with a bunch of trainers now. Yeah. How's that process kind of go? They show up and see it's not for them, or like they show up and get chomped one time and then they're out?
It's very rare that somebody comes in, joins the group, and then doesn't stick around. Either they realize that, one, the style of training that I have, again, it's not for everybody. Like we are getting after it within reason, right? Like all these guys, they're Ferraris, they're McLarens, they're high-end sports cars. I don't want to run that sports car into the ground. I want to optimize what that sports car is going to do, but I also don't want it to turn into a Ford Fusion, right? Like I want it to stay a sports car, right? What you did at Iowa or Texas, where you were grinding 5 days a week, 2 hours a day in the weight room on the field, that was the base of the engine. Now I'm just trying to fine tune that thing. But you're not going to come to me for foam rolling. I'm just going to be honest with you. If people come into the weight room, I just need you to know that for 60 to 90 minutes, we're going to get after it. Like you're going to sweat. Shit's going to get hard at times. It's going to push you mentally, like you were talking about. And 2, 3 maybe people over the past 3 or 4 years, it didn't work out, which again, no hard feelings. I want the best for everybody that comes in my weight room. But if the fit's not a fit, then it just doesn't work out. And I think people, like you said, they know very early on, based upon the intensity in which we're working at, if that's something they're looking for in that stage of their career. Maybe they're not, right? Maybe they're to a point where they're just trying to maintain. But I'm of the works, or of the thought process, that we have such a high genetic potential in the body. Like I just read this study yesterday that talked about all the amazing anaerobic feats that humans can have, where we're running sub 4 minute miles, we're running marathons in X amount of time. But then a strength test, the highest bench press is 4x body weight. And then you got a gorilla that can lift something 20 times its body weight, right? So other mammals are exponentially stronger from a strength and a power standpoint than we are. And I think humans, not that we're going to get as strong as a gorilla, but I think there's more. I think we have more in us. And as a high-end athlete, I think there's such a fine line between, risk and reward, but there is much more in these people than what they think they're capable of.
Yeah, that's I freaking love that. And I like because I think I got it wrong when I was training and while I was playing and those kind of things, because we weren't like, we worked really hard in college, and obviously they beat you up and want mental toughness and those kind of things too. But as I got out, I went through all those leagues. I went AFL, UFL, CFL, and those kind of things. So like I knew I had blue on my collar, and like that was kind of how I made teams, was like doing too much to run to the ball, training really hard, knowing like I'm the try hard guy. And Eric Lichter said this to me a few months ago, where it's like, are you a workhorse or are you a racehorse? And the same concept of like a race car or a Ford Fusion or whatever you said. And I think that's a clean mindset on looking at it, because truly, like everything that's performed in football is the racehorse, race car kind of concept. But like if you always think like blue collar guy, whether it's the special teams guy or the backup O lineman and things like that, you can kind of get too locked in that mindset. So when you get a guy that comes in with that mindset, that like, how do you kind of tweak and poke at that? Because say I found you while I was playing, and I walk in and I just, hey, I'm going to stick around, do at this much more, or so I train with James Cooper with Adrian Peterson's gym down in Houston. I love the culture of guys, really high culture, really high standard of performance, but our volume was bananas, like crazy amount. Like we did like a 2-mile Indian run my first day. The highest volume run we did was like 10 310s. We did a bunch of stuff. We're outside. We're starting with sprints. Then we're doing hurdle jumps. We're out in the Houston heat for 90 minutes, maybe 2 hours. Then we're coming back for an hour lift and those kind of things. So it fed my workhorse. Like it fed my blue collar. Like I think my mindset is I'm working harder than everybody else. But in retrospect now, like I wish I would have been a little more race car mindset. So how do you kind of balance that with guys that come in that do that, or like you kind of steer the ship when it starts?
So I think we know more now from a scientific data standpoint how important recovery is. We also know, and it's a conversation I have with 25-year-old Brian, is you have a maximum recoverable volume. You may not know that. Like your body will let you keep going, but from a recovery standpoint, there's only so much you can do, right? And what I'm putting on the board with some small tweaks here or there for people that want to do a little bit extra, that's about as much as you can handle and still recover to get the maximum adaptation, right? Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to make you the biggest, strongest, most powerful athlete you can be, right? And with all that additional volume, it's hard to get there, right? If your intention is to become more powerful, to be able to run through somebody, run through a blocker, 7 seconds on, 40 seconds off, you got to recover, right? And I think it's a change of mindset from the crazy 8s or the bucket 8s or the 10x10s and all the things that people used to do, which was great for size, great for stamina, all those things, but you weren't increasing somebody's athletic ability at that. Like you were probably hindering their ability to become more athletic. So with all that being said, I hammer away more at recovery more than I used to. And it's because of people like you and all the research that's out now and continues to come out on your recovery needs to match your intensity of your training, if not exceed it, right? Yeah. If you're training at, X amount of intensity and you're recovering like a middle schooler, well, then you're going to perform like a high schooler, right? Yeah. If you're spending all this time, all this money, all this effort on getting stronger, but you're not putting forth the effort at your recovery, then you're ass backwards. And the same thing comes with the extra work, the extra sets, the extra volume, extra volume. You're just inhibiting your body's ability to recover from all of the important work which happens on the front end, right? So it's a conversation. Honestly, it kind of comes back to, do you fit in, with what we got? And I don't really have many people that say we don't do enough. Yeah. That's not, like today. So it was a really good session, short and sweet, but when you left there, the intention, the work was the work, and you're going to be able to recover from that, right? Yeah. And at 30 years old, or some of my guys are 28, we worked out with Luke today, it was 34. I mean, that's just what the doctor ordered. Honestly, a 23, 24-year-old second-year guy, we might add a few things on the back end because they can handle it. But it kind of comes into being able to manipulate the variables from guy to guy, from group to group also, right? Because I'm a believer that everybody can train similarly. So if I have receivers, DBs, O-line, mid-skill, my movement patterns are the same, right? So if I have lower body pull and a hinge movement and upper body push and upper body pull, doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing trap bar, so is everybody else. Like this guy might be doing a single leg RDL, this guy might be doing trap bar. So the hinge is the hinge, but how I manipulate the modality is what changes from person to person.
I like that a lot, just because it's like, because technically the program and like the movement pattern is the same, but you can tailor it to like their positions.
It's a slight change, or you got an upper body injury, so we'll be able to change the modality just slightly. But at the end of the day, you're still fitting within the block of work in which we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I like that a lot, because I like that's like one of my riffs with like the full team training program. Like, hey, everybody's doing what's on the board today. Yep. But that's a good alteration that's very simple. Yeah. And it makes it super personalized.
The pattern is what it is, and you can change it. And it can take something from extremely high end, like the toppest CNS movement that we can have, or you can take it all the way back down. Somebody could honestly deload within somebody else's peak week just by changing the modality of the lift.
Huh. I like that a lot because I like the concept of like minimum effective dose. What's enough to make the perfect adaptation, and then there's like the maximum effective dose too, where like how hard can you go within the recoverability? Because I think like a lot of what the breathwork stuff shows up in every human on the planet is like the recovery. Like, can you handle it? How are you waking up? Like, are you waking up with like a 50% charge on your battery, and then you're just gonna keep working with that, and that's your new normal. So you don't know how to get back to your optimal CNS output and those kind of things. How do like so because I guess it hasn't been approached too many times to me when I've been training with pro athletes or when I was playing and that kind of thing. How do you approach the recovery conversation with your athletes?
So a lot of it is data driven for me. I'm fortunate. I got Whoop users. I got Garmin users. Some of them are Apple Watch users, but it's something that I want to know, especially as we get deeper into a program. Hey, take a look at your sleep cycle. I need to see how long you were in REM, how long you were in these different cycles. Were you actually getting into deep sleep? What was your resting heart rate? I don't get a ton into heart rate variability, not because I don't think it's important, but I don't think the devices give us very good data on that. But if you can at least give me your resting heart rate and how that manipulates from day to day, week to week, that'll kind of tell me where we are as far as the stress level.
It is a standard metric.
Yes.
Yeah. Like I talked with Brian McKenzie a while back, and because I solved my sleep problem where like I started taping my mouth in 2016, I think it was, because I'd try and be a pro and sleep for 9 hours, but it'd say 5.5 or 6, and I'd get pissed off, and then so eventually I stopped wearing it, and then I was like, no, I need to go back and solve the problem. I started taping my mouth and almost reset it like within a week, which was really cool. But he basically said like he was backing on all the wearables and the measurables and those kind of things because he has like a $7-8 unit, and there's still a bunch of variability there. So like we think $100 piece of equipment is going to do what $8 is. So like but like it is a standardized metric. So it is reading the same thing the same way every day. And even like the little pulse oximeters do a good job with heart rate, which I think people see one because those are $20 at CVS.
I mean, if you just tell me, and same thing goes, and this is a different topic, but body composition. If you use the same unit over and over and over again, the variability is going to be within that one unit. Now, if you go from a Fitbit to a Whoop, to an Apple Watch, to a Garmin, and next thing you know, you got 4 things on your wrist, and you're like, well, they're all telling me different things. Well, they're all going to have a slightly different variation,
algorithm or whatever.
It's all different. Same thing with an in-body to a bod pod. Honestly, the DEXA is probably the only thing that I would recommend for somebody that's serious about it. But you can step on one in-body over here, you can go across town and change 5% in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
That's a mind fuck for somebody that's trying to lose weight or, trying to get into a fat loss phase, right?
Yeah, so we used to cheat it when I was with the Vikings because that's just like the electrical stim through the body. So like obviously water transitions well, so we just chug a bunch of water, and so our weight would go up and our body fat would go down. Yeah.
Yes, honestly, it's terrible for somebody that doesn't know what they're doing. It can really, and from a mindset standpoint, and this kind of goes back to general fitness, I really try to avoid machines like that. If somebody's serious about it, I try to set them up with a DEXA or a bod pod. That way I can, again, control the variables that they're stepping themselves into, because that can make or break somebody's session, week, month, whole program with somebody. If they step on it one day on a Friday, they come back the next Wednesday after, a night out on a Monday with the people, and they're really not elevated much, but the body fat percentage reads 3% higher, all hell breaks loose, right? Like that's it from a mindset standpoint. Yeah.
And so I get it in the mental skills world too, because all these guys have wearables. So you have a constant stressor if you choose to keep it in your life. And it's good to like monitor, but it's not something that needs to be a religion in essence of it, because like at the end of the day, like there shouldn't be that much variability day to day. Like some of the baseball players, they travel so much in season. Like, okay, now we can be a little more conscious of that, but like you're accepting these stressors without any per se understanding of it. But like you can always subtract that.
That's right.
And then addition by subtraction that world. But so after you get like their metrics on their wearables and those kind of things, what's the recovery communication or conversation with the guys? Because guys have such a wide range in the NFL of knowledge on recovery,
and
too.
Everybody likes a different form, right? Like we spoke earlier about George, and he's big into recovery. He's a red light guy, blood flow restriction guy, yoga, all those things. He's a guy where I can tell him he needs to recover, but then he'll take recovery and it technically could become a new stressor. Yeah. Right. Like if you recover too much, it's still activity, right? Or it's still movement, or it's still stress. Sometimes you have to pull back on it. I communicate with my PTs like, hey, listen, here's what's going on. Here's what I'm seeing. If we could honestly pull back a little bit on the exercise and the correctives there, because they're already not recovering well, right? So let's turn this into more of spa session, soft tissue, manipulate the body a little bit more. Hey, call Leanne, who's the massage therapist. Hey, here's what we're seeing. Here's where they're potentially holding some stress. And then it comes back to, hey, have you been doing your breathe work? I'm honestly not near where you are, but I do like people to elevate their feet. I like for them to spend 5 to 10 minutes a day working on expansion. No, man, I kind of been skipping it for 3 or 4 days. Oh, it's funny because
your heart rate's up,
your everything, your stupid device is telling me that, and you didn't have to. I asked you out of courtesy, but I already knew the answer, right? So let's get back to the basics. Are you spending some time outside? You wearing your shoes around the house? Like, what little things are you doing that we talk about not doing that can help you get to a better state?
Yeah, I fucking love that. That's perfect because like all those 5 minutes of breathing, focusing on expansion, that's like CNS reset. And then so now you have a new baseline, because some people, after they work out or after a fight or an argument or a bad phone call, their CNS will stay active for
they just leave.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, it's something that I still struggle with. The guys like, hey, great lift, go lay down for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Well, what do you mean? Go lay down, put your feet up, relax, and put your phone in the corner, right? Just give me 5 minutes, take 30 deep breaths in as slow as you can, out as slow as you can, and then get out of here. And at the time, they don't understand, right? They're just like, this guy's making me do this, whatever, I'll do it. But honestly, if they understood internally the effects, the positive effects that was happening is equal to the hour that they just spent lifting. Without that on the back end, not that it's a waste, but that 100% amplifies what we just did.
Yeah, it's energy conservation.
Yes.
It's so the recovery can start then. And then it's just to bird feed it, chew it up to them, when to make the point across. I go, you're about to walk out of here, you're going to drink protein or aminos or creatine or anything like that. What system do you want to be in of your autonomic nervous system?
Yeah.
Sympathetic or parasympathetic? So fight and flight to drink my aminos, or rest
recover
and digest.
Yeah.
Get more out of your food. And now it's just the compound interest, stacking the habits and those kind of things. But I love that you do that.
It's a day to day, right? It's hour by hour, session by session. And if you can just stack variables over time, nobody wins in one day, right? Yeah. Nothing is won in one day. But if you look back at 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, you can say, damn, stacking small individual wins. And George has a really good quote, and I'm going to mess it up, but he says that you don't have to be great to be extraordinary. You just have to do the good things better than everybody else, right? And something of the works, but it just simply broken down and do the ordinary things better than everybody else over and over, and that makes you extraordinary. Don't try to go straight to the top, right? Because you're not going to get there. You're setting yourself up for failure. But you can stack all the good wins over and over again, and that's going to make you a Hall of Fame player.
No doubt. And it's because a lot of what I coach and what I hear anyways, a lot of it's people's narratives and things like that. But really, I end up coaching consciousness.
Yeah.
Because how much in your life can you make intentional? How much can you make meaningful? Then it's a lot easier to do this exercise right, this 5 minutes of breathing on my way out the door right. And then so now it's how great of a life do I want to live?
Yeah.
So and he's obviously has the end game of having a great life. Because I think and we talked about it a little bit earlier, but he has an incredible mindset. He's just a juicy human. Yep. Just the 2 touches I had with him here, he's like a energy, like a electric factory for the room.
Contagious, he's both those things.
Yeah. So I guess as far as what have you learned from that kind of mindset? How's it affected the guys? How's it affected you? How have you coached it? Anything like that? I know it's a weird question.
Yeah. Honestly, one, he's one of a kind. There's nobody else that's like him. But it is always, it's great to have somebody not only like him around, but he's a guy that people look up to, one, because of his play, but the way that he approaches each day, because he is so great and he has this mindset, right? It's contagious, right? So we talked about earlier, and it was maybe before we started recording, the cancerous people. Well, he's the opposite, right? He works hard, he overemphasizes recovery, and I'm trying to get people just to spend 3 minutes on a foam roller, whereas I can look at George and say, this dude does an hour every single day. I can't get you to do 5 minutes, right? Meet me somewhere in the middle, right? And that's where I'd like you to be. So he sets the standard on, I'm going to show up, right? I'm going to do all the things that are asked of me plus some, and I'm never going to complain about it, right? And it's such a breath of fresh air to have somebody that just does it. and doesn't complain, right? And he's had influence from all walks of life in terms of training, recovery, mindset, all the different things. But it doesn't matter when he's in the room and he's with you. It's time to do what you want to do, right? If you prescribe this, he's going to do it. He's in San Francisco right now. Whatever I gave him today, he'll text me later and let me know how it was, right? And then he'll tell me about his recovery.
That's dynamite. I think that's really cool just because, like, I did that when I played. Like, so I walked into a pro locker room, what other level of football it was, CFL, et cetera, and you look around at the great players in the room. And just through observation, like, if you're intentional, like, you're there for a reason, you're going to learn from your coaches, and hopefully you'll learn from the better, more veteran players. And like the one thing that you could see is that all the guys, like, because I always say that, like, if you make it past 3 years in the NFL, it's not a mistake.
Yeah.
And then, like, if you're up at 8, 9, 10, whatever, and obviously if you're all pro level and kind of stuff, like, most of those aren't accidents either. And like you see, like, so I watched like the Cushings and the JJs, Hop, whatever, whoever it was, like they had some, like it was all different, but like they had a routine. Like Jonathan Joseph was 14 years in. And that guy's routine pre-practice, like unmissable, non-negotiable.
Yep. And
then you see like these younger corners that are like bullshit in the locker room or whatever.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, like, are you not conscious enough to understand this yet?
Yeah.
And I've worked with some younger NFL players now in the breath world, and like they're just unconscious to like what is an advantage, what's not. And really, like, all the breadcrumbs are out there for you with the savages in the league. And then I like having those guys in my training group too. Like, I trained for years at Ohio State with some of their NFL guys, and like Corey Lindsley, he's all-pro center and incredible human. Like, that guy is the hour warm-up type of human that like does everything right and then gets in and lifts according to what he needs. It's not all this massive output anymore. It's like dialed. And then like Nate Ebner, like he takes care, like he does like some of the knees over toes stuff and those kind of things. But then like his like what's minimum effective dose is much higher than everybody else's. Yeah. But like that's like, so it's all tailored. But like he's like one of the people that I watched, even though I was like, we were at the same age, same level and those kind of things, but he was a step higher than me in production or like I'd say professionalism.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, you just steal from other people. But like that's why I like the group that you have, where it looks like that, like George is obviously an elevator. George Kittle is who we're referencing, but now you get guys that are chomping at his heels and those kind of things, and that looks like the group. Because the one thing I love about your fucking group, just through the videos and the social and stuff, is the massive front squat numbers that are coming out of your gym.
Yeah.
So if we can transition to programming a little bit, because we talked about it at the gym today too, but how do you assess your athletes? How do you start building programming for off seasons and your guys?
So you brought up front squat, which is one of my favorite things to talk about. And I'm taking all these guys, right? They're all Ferraris. Most of them came from bigger schools where they just grinded, right? Iowa, Alabama, Tennessee, just teams that were known for just having workhorses, right? Well, they all back squatted 500, 550, all that stuff. Very rarely were any of them very good at front squat. So immediately I knew I could take a modality of a lift. I could change what they've done for X amount of years, and I'd be able to stress them from a CNS standpoint without stressing their joints at the same load that was required for that minimal effective dose, right? If you're a 550-pound squatter on the back, I got to load you pretty appropriately to continue to progress upon that squat. If I change the modality from a central nervous system standpoint, I can now load you significantly less, but still get the same effective response. Now, what I've seen, though, is the correlation between people that were terrible front squatters before that are now great front squatters have become much stronger, much more resilient, and better athletes because of it. I made them great at something that they weren't great at before, so now I've increased their skill set in the weight room, which in turn, I love a front squat because it just requires so much more from us, from our midsection, from our breath, from our T-spine. And, you're sticking 400 pounds on your throat. Like, talk about a mind fuck. Like, I got to get down. This thing's all up in my neck. And then I got to stand back up with it. That's the main reason why I love it. It requires a different type of human to put that thing on their throat and say, I'm going to lift this today.
Yeah, with less load too, which is like in and of itself is just like so incredibly logical for the athletic world, particularly pro athletics who, again, a lot of times we don't want to hurt guys in the weight room or anything like that. Like, but it's incredibly functional, incredibly mentally resilient testing kind of deal. And then obviously it's savage for athleticism too. So
it's just one of those things too that I can do so much from a front rack position. We'll do front rack reverse lunges, front rack split squats, front rack Bulgarian, step ups, front squats, all of it from that position. And I'm able to manipulate the intensity just off of where I let you hold the barbell, right?
That's interesting.
These guys, not that when we talked about the length of programs, typically they're about 3 weeks with a deload. I can change the modality just by where I have you hold the bar. And for them, that's all they need, right? But it allows me to continue on that same like general adaptation curve that I'm looking for, but I'm just changing where you place the barbell. Therefore, I change the intention ever so slightly. Now, guys like that, they don't love it when I make them do front rack step ups, right? Like they'd rather hold a dumbbell to their side. But again, we're in a weight room where we're still here to work.
We're training weaknesses, now we're training strengths.
That 135 on a step up is significantly better from a balance, from a stability, just from a single leg force production standpoint than what you would be doing with it on your back, right? And that's kind of the meat, and maybe what makes me a little bit different is I'll go full-fledged phases that's 90% unilateral, right? Like my focus, even my plyos, all of that, my speed work is unilateral work. And then I'll come back to the bilateral because honestly, I know when they go back to their weight room, they're still going to have to bench. They're still going to have to squat. They're still going to have to pull with both feet on the ground. Like I don't want them to be bad at that, right? Like I don't want them to get deconditioned to the stuff that they were good at. I want them to remain good at what got them to where they are, but I can help them get better by adding in this different style of training.
Yeah, I like that a lot. So as far as like adding all those front rack positions to the other exercises and stuff like that, did you see like the straight up front squat jump pretty quick?
Yes.
Because like, so in the 4 a.m. group that I've trained with, like they front squat most days, like obviously not on a back squat day. But so like it's repetition, it's time under tension, it's just comfort handshake with that movement. Yes. But it's only in that bilateral position too. So like I can't like it's just you're changing plane. Like you're like I really like that idea. I kind of want to.
For me, one of the bigger jumps that I had was coming from it was more of a dynamic speed emphasis, but it was like banded front rack reverse lunges, banded split squats, and then we came back into a bilateral front squat, more like max effort.
Yeah.
And we hadn't front squatted, which would be 6-ish weeks. We would do it once a week just for movement pattern standpoints, but we hadn't had any significant load. And I'm seeing 10, 20 pound jumps, and we hadn't even done it in 6 weeks, right? But from a motor unit recruitment standpoint, just from a force production standpoint, velocity was increased during that phase. And then we put it all together. And then when they got back into a rack and I allowed them to control it a little bit more, they just felt more stable. They felt stronger because I was making them wop, 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 wop with banded tension. It's trying, a banded front or a banded front rack, them things are really trying to rip you down. So you're really having to emphasize your elbows up, you're bracing and hitting all those reps, and then being able to control it more in a bilateral position. They just felt strong as shit in it.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Then, so as far as transitioning like the weight room and all these modalities and these training ideas to the field, because like I still think that there's always that kind of contrast between like how much you do in the weight room, how much is applicable to the sport, how much time do they need to be actually doing their sport. How do you kind of chop that up with your guys?
So early phase, like phase one, which we pretty much just finished before they went off to OTAs. We have 2 lighter conditioning days a week, and most of that is linear. We won't start getting into lateral movement until like the last week of April before they leave. The biggest thing that I can give to my athletes is the ability from a unilateral position. All the things that we do is almost directly correlated to you being able to stick your foot into the ground and change directions. That's why we do so much stuff from one limb to the next. That's why we do so much work from a frontal plane. That's why we're always doing lateral lunges. We're always doing Cossack squats. We're always doing lateral step ups. Because if you're running, you got to stick your right foot into the ground and immediately go left. You got to have the ability and the strength to slow yourself down and then reproduce that force, right?
You're very rarely running linearly.
Linear. I mean, maybe a guy like not even Tyreek Hill. It's a terrible example because he sticks his foot in the ground over and over again. He just breaks people off. But you have the Mike Evans of the world that run straight, throw me the ball tall, and that's kind of his bread and butter. But most guys, that's not how they play. Linebackers, they got to be able to shut it down and turn and go play after play, right? Especially the way they play now.
Yeah.
You're running downhill. That guy gives you an instant bop, bop. You got to be able to stick your foot in some capacity, slow yourself down just to try to make a tackle. If you can't, you're getting broken instantly. But just the little bit of ability to slow yourself down in that split second, that's created in the weight room. That's the ability for your quad to stick, your hamstring to turn on as you're sticking that foot into the ground. Everybody thinks it's all quads, primarily hamstrings. As you decelerate, you pull yourself down and then reapply. And without all the unilateral work, we're just setting ourselves up for failure.
Yeah. But it makes sense for a linebacker to train in that frontal plane for sure. Yeah.
I mean, y'all are side to side all day long, right? And, for 55 years, it was how much can we bench, squat, and deadlift for linebackers.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, the game has changed, obviously, right? Like linebackers are 225, 230 now, and they're running, right? But they still got to be able to mix it up, and you still got to run sideline to sideline. But my biggest, over this year and into last year is pulling back the volume on the field. I think we're in a point now where high school kids are 7-on-7, college all off season 7-on-7. You get into the NFL off season, and I'll open up Instagram and it's February, and I'm seeing people go full go on the field. Like, guys, what about my recoverable volume?
Yeah.
Like, what about your joints? Like, how are you able to recover if you're just sticking over and over into turf or into grass, whatever it is, and you're not allowing yourself that time to regenerate? Cells break down. Muscle tissue breaks down, joints break down. You got to have time for that to build back up. And it's much different from a running, change of direction, sprinting standpoint than it is what we do in the weight room. It's much easier to recover from weight room work, what I do, than it is from 60 plays on the field. That wear and tear is much greater than what we get in the weight room. And you can rewind 10, 20 years, the guys that I train, tight ends, safeties, linemen, mid to bigger skill people, they used to spend all of January, February, March, April, they'd spend 16 to 20 weeks in the weight room, right? And they're playing 15 years.
Yeah.
Now, the average life cycle of an NFL player is 3, give or take, not even, but these mid-skill players, they're not making it there. And I think it all boils down to what they're learning at an early age, which is go, field work. When honestly, we could pull back from that a little bit, let the field work start heavy in June, July, let your body be ready to take on all that impact.
Yeah, and I can see both sides of the spectrum where like some people only believe the way to get better at your sport is to play your sport. Mm-hmm. I'm not a believer in that because I love the weight room.
Yeah.
But and like as far as the weight room, like that's kind of like that was part of the detriment of like my workhorse again, where I'd take like 3 days off after the season. Like I just couldn't sit still. It was my mind that was racing. I didn't have enough wisdom at the time to watch the J-Joes and those guys. They take 6 hard weeks off or at least a solid month before they got back into the weight room, which is really all they're doing. Then they're running, and then if anything, it's linear track stuff. And like so, I just didn't. It didn't feed my blue collar soul at the time, but it makes a lot of sense. And then like the more I did get injured, how massive, like even resting while you're injured is imperative to your CNS so that acute injury can heal recover, and everything like that. Yeah.
We spend a lot of time, and I'll have people trickle in from all different phases of the off season. I had guys go all the way to the NFC Championship game, had a couple guys in the Super Bowl. So when people arrive is always different, but I always have a 4-week, what I would consider just a reintroduction to movement, right? First 2 weeks, we're not touching a weight. It's banded. We're going 90-90s. We're opening up hips. We're spending more time stretching. We're opening up T-spines. I mean, we're doing body weight movement, but we're allowing your modalities and your movement patterns to reprogram, because all year long, the weight room stuff that you do, you're checking boxes, right? You're not really concerned with how well your movement pattern is, and you're just trying to get back to the field and be in a position in which you can play, right?
Yeah.
So if you're coming to me and I get 12 weeks with you, I'm willing to sacrifice the first 3 to make sure that you're moving properly. That way the next 8 to 10, you're actually getting something out of it, right?
I love that.
It's always a catch-22 for me. Somebody comes to me second week of March. I'm like, all right, well, I've had some people since the first week of February. I know you see what's going on here, but I need a week. I need
you can't do this.
I need you to allow me.
And that's tough to tell a pro athlete, hey, you can't do it. Yeah,
100%. And it's always a conversation. I know you can, but let me tell you that for the next 4 weeks, you'll get a lot more out of it if you just let me recode you just a little bit. And it's not a full fucking, RPR or some of these big time recodings. I just want to make sure that you're ready to to go with what we got going on here.
Yeah.
Because we're 6 weeks into, and we're coming up on what would be more of like a max effort phase. And you just can't. Not with me.
Yeah.
Right? Like maybe somebody else would let you jump in, but you can't jump right into this max effort week and you haven't done anything since January.
Yeah.
It just doesn't
That's
fly
not
with
the
me.
standard.
No,
Group.
it just doesn't fly. Like we want to make sure that you're training smart and you're training hard, and that maximum recoverable volume, it's like 4 sets for somebody that hasn't done anything from January, right? Like you're going to come in here and get fucking wrecked. Your CNS is going to be fried. And then honestly, for 3 weeks, you're not going to be able to recover properly. Like you're literally going to be on a downhill trend for the next 3 weeks if you don't take that week to regenerate your body.
Yeah. I like that a lot. So how do guys get in the group in general? Is it usually like word of mouth from the guys in the group? They say, hey, my buddy wants to come train? Or is it like...
That's kind of been in the past couple of years. I've had a couple like post-combine guys just from agents. They'll come down, and then if they like it, then they know where they're coming the next year. Just they want to train with like-minded people, right?
Yeah.
And so training O-linemen, tight ends, bigger skill guys, linebackers, walk-up safeties, they're all kind of the same, right?
Yeah,
like I have a couple receivers, but they're all kind of the same, right? So they know a guy that they went to college with that's either moving to Nashville or wants to come to this region, no state income tax, whatever it is. Hey, we know a guy. This is where we train, and they come in. They typically like it, and they move here. They come here for the summer.
Nice. Transition away from athletes a little bit. I need a better term than Gen Pop. Like,
I think you nailed it. They're high performers, right?
Yeah.
So they're high performers on the field, or they're high performers in life, and that's when I categorize people when it comes to my programming, especially with like my small groups. So I'll have like active daily performance. So I do have some older individuals that might be coming off of ACL or knee replacement, whatever it is, and what their performance is active, just daily performance. Like they want to be able to move better throughout the day. Grab the peanut butter jar, sit on the couch, like that is their performance. And then I have athlete performance 1, and then I'll have what would be GP 1, which is general performance 1. And what the difference between the two really isn't that different. Like you caught the tail end of one of my female groups this morning, and she was doing unilateral hamstring curls on a rower, which is a fucking hard hamstring movement, right? She had barbell rollouts, she had reverse hypers, she had glute ham raises. All 4 of those things are pretty athletic based, right? But what I've seen with my general population that has done nothing but women that have done nothing but booty squeezes and lunges for the past year, if I change their modality and train them a little bit more like an athlete, more tempo, more intention on what we're doing, their body responds appropriately. It's a new stimulus, right?
Yeah.
They haven't been there. So
adaptation at its finest.
Yeah, 100%. Like doing barbell reverse lunges with a woman who's used to just doing walking lunges through the gym, they're going to get a great response from that. They haven't done it, right? It's completely new. And they're another one. I've had women doing 135-pound, back rack reverse lunges today. It's a lot of weight for a 36-year-old girl, right?
No doubt.
But their legs respond accordingly, right? Like they look like somebody that can back rack reverse lunge 135.
Yeah, that's
because of it.
Yeah, and I think that's really cool in general because I've seen some trainers, and then they try and train high performers in life, like athletes, and like they'll be doing these box jump scenarios and like a bunch of contrasting from squat to box jumps and things like that. But I think a lot of the athletic world where it is like the posterior chain development, however you activate the core, work in different planes and those kind of things, I think everybody needs that because at the end of the day, like I'm not technically an athlete anymore, but like I'll never not be an athlete, and I'll never not be a high performer. And that's where like the logic of training high performers in life, I think, is really cool. And I actually get a lot out of it personally coaching because like you get like you sink your teeth into one person with one workout, or you give them one supplement to try, or like a sleeping routine to do, and then they're hooked, and then now they're getting more out of life, and now it's just compound interest and 100%. Momentum, and then life gets juicy for them and like juices me up and fulfills me. Do you kind of have that going on? Like how do you
honestly, I obviously love working with athletes, but they're my easiest people because they're so gifted, right? So from a day-to-day standpoint, there's typically nothing that I can do with them that they're not capable of doing, right? So from a coaching standpoint, it's more challenging with the general population, with my general performance, right? Because Sally Sue might have had a knee replacement and her friend might have had a shoulder replacement, right? They're in the same group. Like, it challenges me from an exercise selection, the modalities that I use much greater. And, if so-and-so comes to me with frozen shoulder, they can't lift their arm up, and now they're doing overhead presses 6 months later. Yeah, they freaking love me, right? They can pick their grandkid up over their head. Like, they would have given their left foot to be able to do that for the past year. That's extremely rewarding. Fat loss, weight loss clients is something that I've begun to get more into over the past couple of years. There's nothing really more life-changing than helping somebody lose 100 pounds, right? Like, you may or may not have helped not only change their life, but save their life, right? And I've had people that, they invite me to their birthday parties or family vacations now with them, just because what we've done together is honestly life-changing or life-saving for some of these people. So I get giddy when people have a lot of success with me. And that's, for some people would say, it's probably one of my flaws, right? Is because I really pour into my clients from a emotional standpoint. Whatever you need, like, I'm here to help you become better in your life, right? And that typically comes from a physical training standpoint, but where they progress typically most is their mindset, right? General population, general performers, if I challenge them in a way in which they can overcome these external forces in my weight room, they overcome things in life that they knew they couldn't, right? And we get that with athletes, right? Like, we grow up grinding, puking on each other, all that shit. I'm not doing that to these ladies or these CEOs, but they're coming in and they're PRing and they're getting through things that they didn't know they could do. And then they get into life. And I'm not saying they look back to like, well, shit, I did it at 6 a.m. with Josh, but they know that they're more capable than they thought before they met me.
Yeah, it's a I think everybody should like grow up in the weight room in general, because like, you get this comfort with failure. You see progress. It's super tangible. That's when I fell in love with the weight room. Like, you get out what you put in. And like, that's life in general, like at work, in your relationships, anything like that. That's why I have a massive love affair with the weight room. But like, so when you're coaching this mindset, like, so you get first timer people, or they're in their first 3-week phase or anything like that, and you get the I can't do it, like that kind of thing, or oh, it's too hard. Like, how do you approach that?
Well, first thing I say, if you fucking say you can't do it, get out. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, but it's like the personal. I think that I end up facing a lot of personal narratives that like even with my mom, sometimes she'll say I can't do this. Well, he's like, well, why can't you? Yeah. And then it just, now you get past the conversation. And there's a really cool lady out in California I met too, where like she lets people talk. She's like older than the rest of the group. And she just keeps asking why. Yep. And eventually you start demystifying your narrative. So that's what I do now.
So it's kind of the same thing. Like, I have them justify their reasons as to why they think they can't, right? And then we'll talk about it. But if I'm being honest, while we're talking, it sounds bad, but I'll trick them into performing what they thought they couldn't, right? So I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna take the weight down. I'm just gonna I'll make it a little bit less. So I'll take off a 15-pound and I'll smack on 2 10s, right? Yeah. And then they'll smoke it, because the 10s are smaller. They look smaller than whatever it was. And then I just got to tell them, listen, I appreciate, what you thought you couldn't do, but also I need you to know that not only did you do it, but you fucking crushed it by 10 more. Yeah. And then they'll look at it, and then this high, right? This sense of accomplishment comes from it. And that's, like you said, being able to progress in the weight room, seeing all the gains that are happening. It just takes one. And I always come back, and it's a really weird analogy, but if you take a kid fishing and they don't fucking catch anything, they don't want to go fishing again, right? If you take somebody into the weight room and you annihilate them and they feel awful, they don't want to come back. You take somebody into your program and you show them what success looks like with a little bit of hard work, they're going to fall in love with the process. And that's where people can change their life for good, right? But if they don't have success and they don't enjoy it, right, especially with my general population, they got to enjoy what's happening. And if they do, they're going to keep coming back. They keep coming back. They're going to buy into what you're doing. Not only are they going to buy into the weight room, they're going to buy into the stuff out of the weight room. And that's where the big shift happens, right? That's where life-changing results occur. But they got to buy into what you're doing. If you can't have a conversation with somebody, they're never going to come back. They're never going to buy in. The intention's not going to be there. And the best book/course I've ever taken on that was Brett Bartholomew, Art of Coaching. And Brett's a great coach. He's worked with some really high-end athletes down in Atlanta. but he digs really deep into not only the sports psychology, but just human psychology.
Yeah.
And he really just talks about connection-based coaching model. If you can't connect with people of all walks of life, you can't be successful in this industry.
Yeah, like nobody knows, what is it? Nobody cares how much you know till they know how much you care.
That's right.
Yeah, I really like that concept. And then the good, like, so there's the great sides of addiction. There's great things to be addicted to. The weight room is one of those things. But like, I really like how you split it up, because I've been reading about dopamine as of late too. But like, yeah, if you go in there and get crushed, and I kind of go on bits and rants all the time too, where like, if you haven't lifted a weight or done anything in 6 years, like, I say start with breathwork training. Yeah. So, because like your respiratory, you're going to get smoked anyways. You're going to be sore. You're going to be all the bad things with that. But you're training them with success. Like, you're getting them this high.
Yep. So
you're finding whatever level of success it ends up being, or whatever weight ends up being, you're feeding them with success. I love the fishing analogy too. But that's like, I really like that clean, logical standpoint to like, how do we get them? It's literally like training a kid. Like, how do I get them passionate about fishing? How do I get them passionate about lifting weights? Like, make it fun or make it successful. And like, there's both ways that. And then the cool thing about the weight room, and cool thing about dopamine is built to be preceded by effort.
Yeah.
And like, that's what the weight room is. Like, you put the effort in, you get it out, you get the high.
100%.
And then now you get coming back and smoking it. Yeah.
And I mean, it happens so, and it honestly, it sounds so much easier than it is, but every set or every rep of every set, if you just put forth intention into that repetition, you're guaranteed success, right? I'm a firm believer that there's 100 coaches can write 100 different programs, and if you give it to you or I, and we put forth maximum effort for 8 to 10 weeks, we will have success. Now, if we start to tear it apart halfway through, and we start manipulating, and we start changing rep schemes, and we're changing the rest ratios, and we're not performing everything to our maximum capacity, we're not going to have success. But if you put forth effort in anything that has any sort of progression, you're going to have success with it. And that's what's so unique about exercise science is there's no right way to skin the cat. There's a million different ways to get there. It's just the effort that you get from the individual while they're performing said movement.
Yeah, it's there's an unlimited amount of stimulus you can perform in the weight room.
It's very easy to apply stimulus to somebody. Like, people are like, oh, what I do is so much different. Well, fuck, it's not that much different. Like, what I do is not that much different. It's the way that I get people to compete. It's how I get them to show up on a day-to-day basis. And then also how we recover afterwards.
Yeah,
that's a big difference.
Yeah, and those are all definitely separators. But like, at the end of the day, like, everything, again, this is my own thought process, but like, everything in the weight room, speed, sport, everything is just a variant of tricking the nervous system for the most part, as far as like whether it's the weight you're manipulating, the resistance, the bands, the angle, anything, like even speed, like usually in some you're doing overspeed or underspeed.
Well, sled, whatever it is.
And that's where you see the adaptation, but like, all you're doing is trick, like even like the sauna, ice, everything, you're just playing with the nervous system, and it's not, I wouldn't say it's not rocket surgery. You need to know everything for sure. But like, yeah, like you can, I say it with the breath work. Like, I can breathe somebody and give them the completely wrong protocol. But if it is a slow breathing, you're going to feel better. Yeah. And like, to some extent, like, we just need the work and those kind of things. But I think the attitude and the effort is where I think that's the separator of greatness too. Even in professional sports, I think, like, you walk into a position room and you look at everybody, their measurables, their strength, everything, like, everybody's pretty similar. There's not like, there's some freaks in the NFL, obviously. There's definitely like freak separation in college and those kind of things. But like, what separates you is what's like in between your ears. So like, the guys that, whether it's studying, confidence, control, communication, like with those guys, or like attitude and effort, like those should be massive control variables in your game. And I think it sounds like a lot of guys in your group adopt that, are masters of that. So that makes, I would assume, like, the possible outcome of your protocols and your program fucking awesome.
Well, that's what, you talk about freaks. You've been in some of the groups, and I mean, they're not slapdicks, but if you take probably my three, we'll call them three most accomplished tight ends. You got George, you got Rob Tonyan, 11 touchdowns last year, and you got TJ Hawkinson, who made the Pro Bowl the year before. If you were to see all three of those guys, now they're big, they're tall, they're physical people, but they're not Khalil Max. They're not Nick or Joey Bosa. Like, they're guys, right? Yeah. What separates them is George's ability to get in take a ice shower every single morning. It's his ability to take care of his recovery. It's Bobby's ability to spend 30 minutes every single day in meditation, right? It's TJ's time that he spends with his spacers. He spends outside in the sun. Like, they're non-negotiables for those people, are what separate good athletes, right? Everyone runs a fucking 4.5,
Yep.
right? Everybody's 245 pounds at the position. They're all 6'5". They're cloned. They all look exactly the same. These three, and all my guys, really, what they do away from what we do is what separates them. And that all boils down to their mindset, right? Like, you're not going to come in, give maximum effort with me, and then go home and eat Twinkies and sit on the couch, right?
Yeah.
But that's what I've really done a good job, and my guys have done a good job accepting the fact that everything we do in the weight room, that's not it. It doesn't stop there, right? It's just the very base of the mountain. It's the stuff that I give you and you choose to do outside of here is what's really going to separate you from the next 6'5", 255-pound guy that just got drafted.
Yeah, and that's kind of like where I got the chasing edges concept from. Is like, it's this. I think high levels of competition breed curiosity to be the best, but being the best is based off of feel for you, person to person too. So, and I love all those things those guys do, because like those are three drastically different. Like, I think nature's a variant of meditation. So if that's TJ's thing or Rob's deal is true meditation, and meditation is different for every human. On top of that, then George has all the modalities or whatever it ends up being like that, like. In the level of competition, which is going to be the same mostly, like, you got to find separators. And I think they do a real cool job of that. And so I usually open the podcast with this, kind of skipped it, but we'll close out with it this time. What are you curious about right now? Where are you chasing edges? Where are you learning right now?
Well, honestly, I think one of my biggest inhibitors is more just mobility, range of motion, all the different stuff. So a class, functional range conditioning is something that I'm going to take this summer, and I've done a ton of research on it. Like, so I understand the concept of cars, and I utilize them. I'm not a professional in it, right?
Yeah, Dr. Deandro Spina.
Yep. Breath work outside of like the simple Windhoff and the legs elevated, just expanding the diaphragm stuff. We talked a little bit about the RPR, but anything that I can utilize to get my guys back into a recovery mode, right? And
I'll feed you everything I got, man. Yeah,
for them. And I think just further educating, right? With every person I have, you have a fight and you have a flight, right? And it's a simple concept to grasp, but these are the things that get you into fight, right? And these are the things that you can do to downregulate. So if you're feeling stressed, find something, 2 or 3 activities that can be your go-to to take yourself back down. And it sounds super simple for us because we talk this talk, but for a 40-year-old mom with 2 kids and, she's, working 2 jobs or whatever, she's not going to think about that. But if she were to give herself 3 to 5 minutes, her day would drastically change. If she were to just find whatever it is, and it could be something different from her than an athlete, but whatever. But finding whatever that is for my people, I think is a huge plus.
Yeah, so I always try and tangibilize everything. Like, what I use, like, the concept of like a mask. Like, so now if like when I'm training with you, like, you're gonna get like workout warrior Brian. Like, but like, say I had a family, a hypothetical family, but like before you come home, you got to put on the dad mask, and like. It can be a physical transition, but it needs to be a physiological transition if you're coming from a stress state and those kind of things. But like, I like how you tangibilize it really briefly right there, where like you need 3 activities. So now, like, if you're looking at life as like balance, like you should have balance. Look at it like a seesaw. That work stresses you out, like physically working stresses you out, like your heart rate's up, those kind of things. So like, what do I need to physically put on the other side of the seesaw that down. Balances back out? And like, like breath work's the fastest thing that I think autonomic nervous system do it, but maybe it's painting, being in nature. Nature has incredible compound effects for anxiety, depression, massive tones, like peripherals, sunlight, particular angles of sunlight, all these things compound into down regulation and stuff too. But yeah, I think that's really cool how you obviously everybody stay curious, but balance yourself out, because I think everybody's overstimulated, myself included, as I have nicotine in my lip and cameras and screens and everything like that. But like it's consciousness and intention, same as every rep. Like, everything you do outside of the weight room needs to be conscious too. And then now it's just like, I've seen it when I've taken incredible intention to certain things in my life, and it grows. It's just like, you get out what you put in, like the weight room.
I come back to training, right? Like I pull, 2, if not 3 to 1 to my push. I do the same thing, at least 2 to 1 posterior chain. Well, I definitely don't do 2-to-1 parasympathetic work. Right? Nobody does, right?
No, not even close.
I wake up at 4:30. Tuesday, Thursday, I wake up at 5. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'm either training or training somebody. I make sure to get 5 lifts a weekend. I make sure I get 12,000 steps. And these are, if I don't, right, that's an additional stressor. So, right, let's go more sympathetic. And then I come home to crying babies. And then by the time I get to the bed, I'm like, I need 5. I really need
Daddy
to,
needs 5,
I need to breathe for 5. But even myself, I need to do a better job of trying to down-regulate myself before I step into that environment, right? Otherwise, I'm stepping in already somewhat stressed, and it's just increasing that, right?
And something you can do in 5 minutes too, for sure. Greatly appreciate your time. Dynamite conversation. Love the mindset. Love all the training tactics, the protocols and programming, and the insights already just from picking your brain in the gym today and then here have been awesome. So I appreciate your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything to give somebody that edge, whether it's from me, Joey D or whoever it is in the industry. That's what I like so much about coaching is there's so many different mindsets. There's so many different ways to attack something. But I consider myself a chameleon, right? I've had a lot of different mentors. I've had exposure to a bunch of different people. But what I do is it's the alpha method, right? Like I took all these different pieces and I implemented as to my method. And that's something I feel very strongly about. I don't like it when people just grab things and think that it just instantly fits, right? Because I understand stress and I understand recovery. I understand that you can't just smack it on the board and think that it's going to work for you all the time. Sometimes it does, right? Sometimes you can take something you saw off Instagram and it can be a hamstring modality and it might fit perfectly, right?
Yeah.
But you can't just throw it in there every time and think that it's going to fit.
The Instagram ingredients don't always work. They don't always mix into the cake.
No.
Where can everybody find you? And then tell us about your programs in the gym and everything.
Yeah. So Instagram's probably my biggest platform. It's Josh_Alpha Strength. I have what would be an 8-week power program that I'm offering up right now. It's alphapowerprogram.com. I'm not very active on Twitter, despite Elon Musk coming through and acting like he's going to save
changing the world.
Going to save the world. But normally the best way to get a hold of me is Instagram, and we can talk about it. And I'm always an open book. Like I have phone calls with people every single week. It seems like just talking programming. Shoot me a video if you think something's wrong, like within your lift. I'll honestly take a look at it and tell you what I think. Sometimes they're fucking great. They're like, hey man, my deadlift just seems off. I'm like, dude, you just pulled 550 and it looked flawless.
Yeah,
like you're good, right? Like keep doing what you're doing.
The personal narrative's off. Like everybody,
you're change your mindset because that shit's fucking awesome.
Yeah, that's tight. No, that's cool. That and that's what I love about social too is the interaction, the reach that we can truly have, and the change that can be influenced. So, boom.
I appreciate it.
You're the man. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.